There is no antidote.
Hello and welcome. We are starting the first of our 2 October Halloween month shows. And I am so excited that you are with us tonight because we are going to be making some monsters. That's not true. We're going to make some cocktails and we're going to hear about making monsters from Kathryn Harkup, who is our guest tonight. And I know that Davey has all kinds of really exciting things for us, including a quiz and maybe some show and tell.
I do have some show and tell this time. That's right. Yes, I'm very excited for this one. This was a really fun read and listen. There was so much interesting things going on with Mary Shelley's between learning about Mary Shelley and learning about Victor Frankenstein. It was really enjoyable. So I'm excited to hear the questions you all have for Kathryn.
Yes, and you have to admit there's a lot of science in science fiction, as it turns out. So without further ado, let us introduce Kathryn Harkup.
Hello.
Hello. We're so glad to see you.
It's very nice of you to invite me. Thank you very much.
We're excited because, of course, I love Frankenstein. I used to teach it back in the day when I was a professor, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I think this is going to be a really fun show. I had to ask, did you happen to make the cocktail for yourself?
I'm afraid I didn't. It is rather late in the evening or early in the morning, depending on which way you look at it here. And I decided against it.
So it is a bit of a witching hour for you at the moment. We'll say hello to our friendly group peoples. We usually have quite a gang, and some of our regulars are back again. And so we'll say a few words about the cocktail. Essentially, I wanted to capture that Frankenstein sense of things, right? There's bitterness, there's dark, there's gall, but there's also this kind of frothy hope, especially in the beginning where he's on the ship and he's like so excited about everything, and he's really quite quite a bubbly person. Yeah, naive and bubbly. So what I thought would be great is to have a cocktail that starts bitter, but is topped with the bubbles so that the two mix together as you drink them. And so thing. Oh, thank you, Thing. Goodbye. And this is the drink that we came up for tonight, and it is a lovely orange color, which I think is really all the better for October, for Halloween. So cheers to you, Kathryn. Cheers to everyone else.
With a cup of glass of water.
Not a glass of water. Glass of water still works. And I just got a message from. Oh dear. Davey, some people haven't gotten the link tonight, so we're going to have to go ahead and resend. For some reason, it seems to have not gone out in the emails. So I'm going to send that right now. But while I'm doing that, why don't you tell us who has won tonight, Kathryn? What is the name of the cocktail that we've chosen?
It is Phlogiston Theory.
Ah, I love it. And that comes from Wendy Wassman, which I'm very excited about. I am just going to pop into my feedback here
I just sent you the link in the private chat, so you can easily copy and paste it.
Okay.
We still have some people on watching.
Yes, well, I just saw Wendy. Wendy just popped into the feed right there.
Say hello if you're out there, peculiars. Let us know you're there.
I'm working on getting you the other link. Sorry about that. It's tricky sometimes the way this all works out. Well, while we're waiting for me to fix the problems, Kathryn, I want to start just by asking you to tell us a little bit more about what led you to this, because I know my love for Mary Shelley is sort of long-standing and quite varied, because I started off as a student and I became someone who taught it as a professor. And so I just wonder, what was your first entree? If you can tell us that, I'll send this correct link to people who've missed it and we'll carry on.
I think, probably like most people, I was introduced to the whole kind of Frankenstein idea, Frankenstein's monster, through Halloween images of this green-skinned, square-headed, bolts through the neck kind of creature. And I knew that it was written by this woman, Mary Shelley. And I thought, well, what's the original like? Where did it all come from? So I decided to read the book and realized it was absolutely nothing like the films that I'd seen or the cartoons and things like that. And so I was fascinated by it. And back in the day when I worked trying to persuade teenagers that science and engineering was a fantastic thing, I would use any hook or crook to get them interested in. And talking about dead bodies and reanimating them was it seemed to me like a good way to do it. So I started looking into more about Mary Shelley, where she might have got her ideas, and the practicalities. If you really wanted to build a monster and bring it to life, how would you go about it? Because there was some interesting ideas back in Mary Shelley's day of how people not exactly tried to do this, well, sort of, but there was a lot of real science that I could talk to students about, as well as this fantastic book.
That's amazing. And what I really like about that is that I remember all of my students being utterly floored when they realized for the first time that it starts on a boat. They're like, it starts on a ship? Who's this guy? Why are we talking about finding the poles?
Oh, absolutely. And that was a definite thing at the time. No one had made it that far. There was complete speculation about what was up there. I have read fantastic stories of crews who refused to sail any further north than a certain point because they thought the extreme magnetism would pull all the nails out of the ship and they'd sink. So, or they might get there and there'd be this tropical paradise, or it'd be made out of gold. Fantastic stories. And these people who you've got to have some kind of special quirk to get on a boat and just head off into the unknown, especially when it's that cold. It can't have been fun.
No, well, and I mean, I've read also about the people who, who lost their lives, and first of all, I mean, sometimes isn't it true that some of them ended up eating the dogs, like dog sled teams, and just everything?
Oh, yeah, there were definitely explorers who resorted to eating their dogs and then died of, is it vitamin A poisoning from the livers or something?
Oh, something
Where did
like
I read
that?
that?
Yeah, I can't remember, but I do know that they would eat shoe leather. I mean, this is a horrible place to be. And
absolutely. You start looking at your companions and thinking,
yeah, vegetarians first, right? I always figured the vegetarians would taste better, so you start there. But no, it's true. So that was one of your introductions, and I think to me that's, I don't know, it's one of my favorite parts of the stories, that it's so immersive and you learn so much about it. Could you tell me just a little bit more about what was your, well, let me put it this way. As you began to study and find out that some of these things really happened, I mean, the first scene that you open up with in the book is, well, it's unsettling. And if you could tell us a little bit more about that, I think that would be awesome too. I'm just getting the final things out there to everybody.
So there was this wonderful moment. It happened up in Scotland, Strathclyde University, as it is now. And it was an anatomy lecture. And because bodies were few and far between to be dissected, crowds filled the anatomy theatre. But this particular body was particularly special because this one was very fresh. This was a murderer, a man called Matthew Clydesdale. He'd brutally killed someone, and his punishment, if you were a murderer, you couldn't just be hanged until you were dead. That wasn't nearly enough punishment. It had to be far worse than that. No. So he was hanged until he was dead, and then a fate worse than death. You were handed over to an anatomy professor to be dissected in front of a huge audience. And so that's what this particular chap did. But he had an extra special, because he was pulling in the crowds. You've got a murderer. This is an exciting event. He also had an exciting experiment to conduct because this body was so fresh. He got together this enormous battery and decided to start plugging this corpse into the wiring. And there is a spectacular account. It's probably hugely exaggerated. However, the story goes that this professor, this Dr. Ure, started making incisions into the corpse. At no point did this corpse bleed. This was a corpse. This guy was dead.
Definitely dead.
Absolutely dead, not just passed out from whatever. So he starts cutting in, making various incisions to the back of the neck and to the nerve through the buttock, to the sciatic nerve.
Through the buttock.
Through the buttock, of course.
Got it, of course.
And you get wires from your battery and you start hooking up the nerves that you've exposed. And this body started to move. The leg extended, it almost kicked over one of the assistants. They hooked up one of the nerves, the phrenic nerve in the neck, and to the ulnar nerve in the elbow, and Matthew Clydesdale's dead arm lifted up and apparently started pointing to people in the audience. It was chaos. People fainted, people ran out screaming. So it sounds an awful lot like the kind of shenanigans that Mary Shelley, you're thinking, well, that's too much opium, that's a badly digested meal, she's come up with that. But no, maybe she was actually just inspired by real events.
I think that's fascinating. And the other thing I like about it is I wrote a book called Clockwork Futures, and in it I talk a little bit about the showmanship quality of scientific experiments, because you actually had to you had to get people's attention. There was a lot of fuss made about electrical tools of sorts. And sticking an electrode up someone's bum after they're dead, I do wonder, were you just in the bath one day having a little tipple and thinking, what would be really interesting? Electrode up the bum. Like, exactly how does one come up with that idea in the first place?
Well, there's always that moment of, how are you absolutely sure that someone is dead? Because there are, there are stories.
Yeah, there
and
are.
You kind of want to make sure. And so I don't know, if something's going to wake you up, an electrode up the bum is probably going to do it.
That's true. That's true. Waking the dead, literally.
Literally, yeah.
I hope you saw there was quite a number of hellos suddenly in the chat. We apparently, for some reason, some of the emails didn't go through, so everyone's here now, and I see them all waving and saying hello. Those of you who missed it, the cocktail I was explaining is bitter and frothy. It's partly to cover the bitterness of Victor and the monster and the frothiness of our erstwhile ship-going, north-finding chap in the beginning. But also that the title was Wendy Wassman's, I'm going to let you say it, Kathryn.
Phlogiston.
Phlogiston, yes. So that's the one we decided to go with.
Phlogiston theory, yes.
The phlogiston theory. It makes me sound drunk when I say it, like I've had too many phlogiston theories, like our phlogiston theory. Right? I mean, it's kind of, there's Mike. Hi, Mike. So I think that's partly how it goes. Okay, now that we're all here, let's start giving the questions over to Kathryn. I know that there's a couple of you. I did see Allison did pop up really briefly a point about poisonous polar bear livers, which I did not know. I will not eat a polar bear liver now if I'm ever trapped in the ice.
I'm definitely going to be Googling that one afterwards.
Yeah. Also, I think, isn't it normal that if you're trapped in the ice, a polar bear is probably going to eat your liver? Is more likely.
Possibly. I think livers generally are a bad idea, because that's where all the toxic stuff gets sorted. And
my father was always quite fond of them, though, I have to say. The smell is not something you necessarily get used to.
No, texture as well.
Mike, so phlogiston is just about the only thing I remember from undergrad chemistry. We should talk about it, maybe. So let's say a bit.
University. That's been a debunked theory for about 200 years. What were they teaching at your university? Phlogiston
how to
theory.
Raise the dead. Mike's an expert on how to raise the dead.
Oh, excellent. In that case, it's perfect. Phlogiston theory was vitamin A. Yeah, it's what we were chatting about earlier. Don't eat the sled dogs when you're stuck in the poles. It's bad news. For the vitamin A can kill you. Phlogiston theory. It was a wonderful theory that was put forward. Oh God, this would be 18th century, so 17 blah. People were trying to explain how things burned. And how, heat basically moved around. So the idea was that there was this phlogiston that was within a substance. And if a substance contained a lot of phlogiston, then it was very flammable. And when you burnt it, that was the phlogiston being released. And it sort of kind of worked, except that people, there were obvious flaws to this plan. the great Lavoisier finally put the nail in the coffin of this particular theory, because he burned things in very carefully sealed containers. And he said, well, no, there's no weight change. What are you talking about? There's nothing being released. It's just reorganization of matter, and it's a chemical reaction. So it was a great theory, and it's got a fantastic name. But it was superseded by accurate.
By correct information.
Correct information. Yeah.
Sad. You know, I've just been I've spent a lot of time recently researching the origin of hormone theory, and that is also one of those that starts with some very unusual ideas in it. Hello, Sarah. Sarah's from New Zealand. She's actually living in the future, so it's tomorrow. Actually, it's tomorrow where you are too, Kathryn.
It is technically Friday, yes.
Yes, you guys are both. Yeah. You've made it to Friday before us. Mike Breen was just telling us that he's raised a few cadavers. We were talking about phlogiston theory, if you missed it. Welcome, all of you. Sorry again. I'm not quite sure why half you got the message and half you did not, but we're working through that. I'm glad you're all here now. One of the things that I find interesting is just how, as we began to learn how small particles really were, it actually sounded almost stranger than the things they came up with, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, to their credit, this is the Enlightenment. They found out an awful lot very quickly with some very, very basic equipment.
Right.
It is astonishing what they achieved. There's a wonderful book written by a woman, I've forgotten her name now. She wrote a load of sort of instruction manuals in chemistry and physics for kids, basically, little textbooks for them to enjoy. And she's trying to explain heat capacity with no knowledge of energy or atoms. And that takes some doing. But she does it, and she does explain the concept of it without any knowledge of atoms or energy.
It's astonishing what they could do with so little. I mean, really. Again, getting back to the concept that we think we have the knowledge today. My book's about head transplants, and that's kind of about raising the dead. But we actually had an awful lot of this knowledge before. Just a quick hello. Lucy Jane Santos is here. She's the author of the Half-Lives, the book on radium. And Chloe, and several of you are also in the UK. So bless you for coming out at the witching hour. But it's the right time of year for it, frankly. Definitely. I've got all the accoutrement now ready to go. So, okay, put your questions in. I know some of you have had, we don't just have to talk about making the monster. I know we promised and discussed A is for arsenic. And those of you who are big mystery fans, as I am, and also murder by Shakespeare, death by Shakespeare, murder by Shakespeare, death by Shakespeare.
There were definitely some murders in there, yes, but other forms of death too. Natural and not so natural causes.
Right. You know, I think I haven't read the Shakespeare one yet, so I don't want too many spoilers, but you guys can ask questions about all of them. I do have to say, since you did A is for arsenic, what is your favorite poison?
Well, I mean, it changes. It depends on your circumstance and who you want to kill, really. I mean, that's you true. Have to tailor it to your particular victim. I do have a soft spot, I would say, for phosphorus, just because it's an element I spent many unhappy hours with in a lab. And it's particularly gothic in its method of killing, all of this glowing in the dark nonsense. So yeah, I have a bit of a soft spot for phosphorus in all its unpleasantness.
I think my favorite poison is probably alcohol. I mean,
yeah, it's very effective.
I do like that
it's
one.
It's a bit of a slow burn. Oh.
Yeah. So Kristen has a quick thing to say here. She said, I never thought before about the necessity for animal bones to make an 8-foot tall person. And I think that is really interesting. He's huge. He's just so much bigger than we have concept
Absolutely.
for.
Frankenstein's creature is, when you start to think about the practicalities of making something, I understand where Frankenstein was going with this. You know, the human beings were fantastically complex, and there's lots of tiny little details in there that are difficult to see and stitch together. So just scale everything up. make your life easier. But that just introduces a whole load of other problems, like where the hell do you get 8-foot human bones? You can't. So yeah, there's going to be some animal bits in there, and yeah, the whole idea of sort of compatibility, tissue matching, all of that kind of stuff, that is not in existence. So they can just merrily stick together whatever they come across.
It's like Warner Brothers, before the cartoons realize there's gravity, they don't fall down.
Yes,
so you're
absolutely.
fine. It's okay. I strangely, so this is a quick preview for October 28th when we're going to be doing my book. But Dr. White said much the same thing. He'd been working on head transplants on monkeys, and he wanted to do a human head transplant. They said, well, won't that be more complicated? He's like, no, they're much bigger. Like bigger is definitely better.
None of that finicky little detail.
Right, all that little stuff. Mike Breen says, I've read a lot about Frankenstein, the greatest novel of all time. I kind of got to say I agree. And I got to give credit to Dr. Harkup for the best encapsulation of Mary Shelley's lifetimes and influence I've ever read. So,
wow.
Yay! Wow. And Mike is also a teacher as well. So, or has been, as have I. So yes, there's a lot to appreciate. I had not read your book the last time I taught this class, and I would have been better off if I had. Oh, Sarah's in here. Question: what is the most surprisingly effective poison most people probably have access to today? Oh, that's an excellent question. She says, asking for a friend.
Okay, with the caveat of please don't kill people. There are consequences. But I suppose it depends where you're living. But there's a lot of stuff growing in the garden that, in the right proportions, steeped in a cup of tea. Foxglove, that's everywhere.
I've got that in my garden.
Yeah, I've got it in my garden. It's very effective in the right proportions. Yeah,
as one does.
There's all sorts that grow. Yeah, we grow ricin plants in public gardens in the UK. That seems fine.
And yet. In the wrong hands.
Absolutely. So yeah, in terms of lethality, I think ricin probably tops digitalis.
And what does that look like? I've not actually seen what the flowers are for that one.
They're not particularly exciting flowers, but what they do have is really big, beautiful red leaves.
Oh, nice.
So it fills a nice space in a public garden, and if you put it towards the back where the kids aren't going to run in and eat the beans, then it's probably fine. I've been told they taste like hazelnuts. Please don't find out.
Well, I have quite a lot of nightshade in my garden. I didn't put it there. It put itself there, and I went to the botanical gardens. My botanical gardens here in Cleveland. I still think we all ought to do a field trip here in Cleveland. We have a witchcraft museum and everything. But the botanical gardens herb staff, the ones who run the herb garden at the botanical gardens, are all volunteers. There are 4 of them, and they're called the herb witches. And they might be. And the one told me, she said, well, it shows you. So it shows your yard. And I thought,
yeah,
that's fantastic. And I love them. I had them come do programs for me when I used to work at the museum. They were
fantastic.
Really, really good. But yeah, I definitely have poisonous things in my yard for sure.
Most people do.
Yeah. Mike Breen, every few years I read about a mushroom gathering mishap here in New England. Yes. Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, that plants, if you don't recognize it from your dinner plate, don't eat it. Mushrooms are a bit more tricky because they all look really similar. I really wouldn't trust anyone who, heads out and goes, hey, let's go mushroom picking. Let's not. Let's admire from a distance.
Allison wants to know if the ricin is poisonous to animals.
Yes.
It is. Oh, so hopefully they know not to eat it. My chickens are not very bright, and I'm always chasing them off of poisonous mushrooms.
I've had various strange questions in my career. I have been asked about chickens and deadly nightshade, because some rabbits have an immunity to deadly nightshade.
Well, the deer must, because they are eating mine to pieces.
Yeah. Ricin, because it gets into your ribosomes. Everything needs ribosomes. So I don't see how you really build up an immunity to that one.
That's terrifying.
But because it's a protein poison, if you're eating it, your body will do its best to digest it before it gets absorbed into the body. So eating ricin, it's not good for you, but you have to eat a lot more than if, say, it was injected into your bloodstream.
Right. Still, Wendy says, I love the background into Shelley's life and what she was learning. That was very, of course, I was interested in Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley as well. Mary Wollstonecraft, sorry, her mother. And because I was an 18th century scholar myself and spent a lot more time in her work than I did with Mary Shelley's work until much later. And there's a lot of political, I think that you can miss the political content. I think you can miss the kind of social content that's in there if you're not really looking for it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you were reading it at the time, because that was very much part of the public discussion, then yes, it would have been obvious. But today, I think it mostly bypasses us. And certainly the influence of both her parents, Mary Wollstonecraft and Godwin, is very much in the book. But to appreciate it today, Godwin has disappeared off the map, really.
It's true.
I mean, he's an absolute legend in his day, but who knows about him now? No one. Whereas Mary Wollstonecraft, quite rightly, is still very well known, very highly respected. But yeah, unless you're going to read their works as well, I think it's very difficult to get the context for the political background for Mary Shelley. And all the other stuff, it wasn't just her parents, the people that came to her family home. This this constant stream of really influential people and interesting thinkers and scientists and politicians and artists. But she had a phenomenal upbringing.
She did. I mean, it's so funny when people are like, how could a teenager? I'm like, you don't really seem to know what this teenager's life was like.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, she was fascinating to me. And I also think that honestly, when the students who read the book when I was teaching it, they got really exercised about the word abortion in the text, which didn't mean the monster calls himself an abortion, but he doesn't mean. They got very exercised about that and thought that was political, but they missed all the actual political content that was going on. So my work was definitely cut out for me back then.
Words definitely change their impact and meaning with time.
Completely. Yes, the vampires. I'm a big vampire person. I believe we've both at different times in our careers been described as vampire experts, which I appreciate.
I'm not sure I've ever had vampire expert. You can have that one. I've been pointed at in the street by a kid's going, "That's the vampire lady." I don't think counts. But anyway.
She says, how have you always been a big book lover? So what's your desert island top 5 books?
Oh my God.
Is that a hard one?
I've always, I am a big reader. I don't really watch much TV, but I do read a heck of a lot of books. And, my top 5 desert island. Oh, I'm going to go for whoppers. Complete works of Shakespeare, obviously. The Bible. God, what else? Proust. I've never read Proust. Let's take the complete works of Proust. That'll keep me occupied for a little while. Books that have really kind of... there's so many books that I've read and thought, bloody hell, that's amazing.
Do you know my favorite? I think I would take Moby Dick.
See, it's on my shelf behind me, actually, just over there. And this is my unread bookshelf. And sadly it's there, and once I finish writing, oh my God, that's me for months.
That's you. I have a deep appreciation for Moby Dick, and I wrote a paper about it, which was made use of a terrible pun. It was called A Fish's Scale, and I know, and it was really interesting that it ever got accepted, because there were 2 reviewers, and one reviewer said, "Oh my God, I love it. She's channeling him. She's literally channeling Melville." And the second reviewer said, "Oh my God, I hate it. She's literally channeling Melville." Like, they said the exact same thing. They meant very different things to different people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did see also part of Sarah's question there. Do you have a favorite, like, television version of Frankenstein, or a favorite vampire from pop culture, which I think we'll get into more pop culture with Davey.
I have my favorite film interpretation of Frankenstein, possibly aside from Rocky Horror, Might be Metropolis.
Oh, interesting.
Hence,
I wouldn't normally think of that as a, but
it's very much a Frankenstein tale, and hence it's my Twitter handle, Rottweiler's
is.
Robot.
It is.
Yeah, I do
Kristen's
love
right.
it.
There is a dancing. Yes, there's a dancing Frankenstein. Young Frankenstein is my go-to when I've had a bad day. Yeah, that's too good.
Don't worry, everybody. Young Frankenstein will come up again. We'll get there.
Davey promises. Susan Ballinger says she'd take Winnie the Pooh, which I've never actually read. Yeah, that is a good call. I've seen little animated things, but I've never actually read it.
No, I've read it. It's wonderful. It will get you through the darkest times.
That's what I hear. Yeah. Has anyone seen the movie? I didn't actually watch the movie. I don't know if it was any good or not.
No.
Oh, the Hulk. That's interesting. He's both the Frankenstein and the monster. That's clever there. That's true. Mike Breen talking about the fact that Bruce Banner in the Incredible Hulk it kind of gets double duty there. Wendy Wassman, who works in a bookstore. Yes, that's a good one. By her. The Decameron is
Shakespeare and a bunch of other stuff all in one.
Right. I'm sorry. I'll just read that out for anybody who needs to. My top desert island book is Boccaccio's Decameron, she says, because the stormy night when Byron proposed that everyone write ghost stories kind of reminded her of that. And it's also got that sort of, the Canterbury Tales quality to it, too. There's that. I love the Tales version of
yes. It's also got that kind of end times vibes of everyone's dying of plague. Let's go to the countryside and tell stories.
Yes. Which intersects with Shakespeare too. I mean, there was the plagues being,
absolutely
common.
Yeah, and he'd lifted several tales from the Decameron straight into his plays. Right. So yeah.
What do they say? Immature writers borrow, mature writers steal.
Yeah. Shakespeare,
which I stole from a writer, which makes me very mature. So, I want to make sure that I'm sort of keeping my eye on the time. I have a few announcements, and I also want to get to Davey's quiz. So those of you who are still typing up comments, get those in, because I want to make sure we finish up our discussion. One of the problems is there's a bit of a lag, so often it takes me a minute to get the comments. So you guys are typing, but I'm not seeing them yet. So we'll get through those, and then we're going to move on. Davey's got quite a Davey's kind of our pop culture maven here, and he's got quite the quiz for you, Kathryn. I think you're gonna.
Oh God!
I think you're gonna like this, and for everyone else too. We
I didn't know I had to revise for this.
I promise it's a very friendly quiz. But Brandy, don't forget, we also have a video for everybody.
Oh, that's right. We have a little video in case anybody missed it there. What is the biggest thing you think pop culture adaptations miss or get wrong about? I love this question because there's so many things that they get wrong about the pop culture version of Frankenstein. What do you think are the top ones?
Oh, I think it's the idea that it's the misuse or misapplication of science. And I don't think Frankenstein the novel is at all, it's not misapplication of science. This is wonderful. If Frankenstein really had achieved what he achieved, oh my God, medicine would be changed forever. So it's not because of bad science. It's lack of responsibility and care. And thinking through the consequences of your actions. It's not necessarily bad science. So that grieves me a little bit that it always seems to be, bad scientist does bad science things. But that's probably just my gripe because I'm a scientist.
Well, I think that you might appreciate Mr. Humble and Dr. Butcher that because a lot of that book is about somebody who kind of has two very different approaches to his life. One is science and one is humanitarian, and the messy ways in which they bump up against each other and how we have to. I know I've mentioned this before probably, but Paul Virilio is a French theorist of accidents because in France they have theorists of accidents, and I know. And he's famous for saying that when you invented the train, you also invented the train crash. And so this concept that technology always brings with it its own consequences, which is fine, but you have to. That doesn't mean don't do science, but it means be aware.
Yeah, it is astonishing that at no point did Frankenstein think maybe building an 8-foot creature isn't, the first place. It's not the place to start. Start small.
Yeah.
If he'd started with a cat, maybe, and worked up. But no,
Right.
he goes straight in there.
Pet cemetery thing going on there, though. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe a
absolutely.
mouse, smaller.
Yeah, mouse would be cute.
Mice,
and test your theories before you just go all out on the 8-foot monster.
The sheer size of the creature is always one of the things that got me. And also I was trying to explain to my students that, if you're working on something for that long outside of refrigeration and proper, like bits of it are rotting. And so they're like, why are his eyes white? I'm like, well, because he's rotting. Eyes don't stay nice for very long. So yeah,
I do worry that he was working in that tiny little attic room. His neighbours must have suffered because there's no refrigeration in the late 18th century. It's going to be grim. Stories you read about dissection back in the day. Horrible.
So I used to work for a medical museum, and I used to have to reenact various things. That's always fun. But one of the things that we talked a lot about is Vesalius, and his neighbors did complain, actually, because he was always boiling bodies to get bones. You imagine just It's not that you're boiling a fresh rabbit and going, oh, it smells. And I was like, didn't. No, it's like, this is a mostly rotting thing I pulled off the gibbets. Maybe I'll burn that.
Absolutely. And they didn't even always boil it. There was sometimes like, we can't be bothered with that whole boiling thing. We just put it in a barrel and just let it sit for a few weeks.
Yeah. Now, granted, there were a lot of smells in the 18th. I'm a historian of the 18th century. There were many smells. So possibly pungent. That wasn't the most overpowering thing that you'd encounter. Kristen says, A is for arsenic is one of my faves. Mine too. And I read all of Agatha Christie along with it. Me too. And it was the best use of my time ever. Me also. Why are poisoners so interesting when poisoning is such a small act?
I have many theories about this. There's something about poisoners that always attracts more attention than a lot of other killers. I don't know, because you have to think about poisoning someone. Yeah. You have to take time to plan that. You can't just be in the middle of an argument and lash out with some poison.
Right. It's true.
If you've got a blunt
delayed reaction, isn't it?
It is.
It's that like I'm going to walk away and know that this is going to happen.
It's not. I'm going to walk away and get the poison. I'm going to figure out how to give it to the person. I'm then going to walk away knowing that it's going to take them hours, maybe days, to actually die. Yeah. And at no point do these poisoners think, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe this is not the solution to my problems. Whereas if in the heat of an argument, I can sort of see how that happens. It's the planning.
I spent a lot of time. I was working on a forensic book at one point that didn't end up becoming a book, but did become a very interesting museum exhibit. And one of the things I spent a lot of time researching about was how, because the symptoms of cholera and the symptoms of arsenic poisoning are quite similar, that people would just wait for a cholera outbreak and be like, okay, where's the arsenic? And then, kind of like, we'll work that out. And the consequences were dying. Like, you literally just lose liquid from your body in every conceivable possible way that you can lose liquids. It's not good. Sarah asks, why is it considered the feminine method? Or is it the time taken? She said, because women had access to food and drink with traditional gender roles.
Yeah, it is. It's access to weapons. Right. So actually more...
Or lack of access to other kinds, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. The female murderers are rare compared to men. So they always attract more attention when they are found guilty or even suspected of a crime. And although most female killers use blunt objects, knives, just like everybody else, they have a very, very slightly higher chance of using poison than men. But there are still more male poisoners than there are female poisoners.
Is it also true about suicide, though, isn't it? That more generally speaking, they say there's a greater propensity for, and I've seen lots of statistics to debunk this too, but that there's a greater propensity for men to take their lives with guns or other, objects of that nature.
Yeah, I've read similar things that again, it's access.
Right.
If you put barriers between the means of killing yourself, people, you have to think about it. You have to contemplate what you're doing, and you have to go to effort. So yes, again, women, their primary access, I guess, would be domestic things. And when they were selling arsenic like candy,
it candy was, some of the time.
Yeah, literally as candy. Then it was easy to get hold of. Certainly easier than getting hold of a gun in Elizabethan times. I would have, Victorian times.
Right, not like in the United States right now.
Well, I don't even know. Was it just as was that true in the Victorian era? Is it a more recent thing? Gun ownership? I don't know.
I think it depends on what part of the country you were in. The Wild West was called that for reasons.
Oh, but, yes, I'm sure.
I have a question for you, and then we're gonna switch over and let Davey ask his quiz of everyone. But my question is, would the story have been any different if Victor Frankenstein was Victoria Frankenstein? Because it was written by a woman, of course.
It was. And she, Mary Shelley is very harsh on her female characters.
She is.
She doesn't do much for her sex in her characterization of women. I think it would have been different, simply in terms of sort of plausibility, because however fantastical Frankenstein is as a story, it is always a guy goes to university, studies, he finds something, he finds that little secret that opens up a whole world of possibilities, and a woman would never have got there.
Because she wouldn't have had the opportunity at all.
She wouldn't have had the opportunity, so it would have been how she would have got her knowledge. That's interesting. I mean, it's not to say that women were uneducated, but they didn't go through a formal education in the same way that men did.
Because so much of the language is around the lack of maternal care of the monster. Yes. I just wonder if it would make a difference if it had anything to do with gender.
Okay, so if
Sarah says completely unrelated, but your hair is fantastic, Kathryn, and it looks amazing. So I agree. I think you're looking good. You're looking very well. I've got my hair hid under a hat tonight, but you're looking fantastic.
It's like we were saying earlier, it's the full in the face lighting that's hiding all of the bags and the wrinkles.
It works out. It's almost like Botox. There probably would have remained the plot of education from the father. I think that's probably
absolutely
true.
Private education. So assuming that Victoria Frankenstein had the same educational opportunities or opportunities for learning that Victor did, then I possibly would her character have taken care of her creature in a different way, maybe. Although again, Mary Shelley, she, like you say, she didn't have any maternal figures in her books, virtually none.
Yeah, well, she had very few in her own life. I mean, she had the books of her mother, but
and
she read on her mother's grave. I did quite a lot of reading on graves, but not my mother's grave.
No. I mean, learning, tracing out your mother's name on your gravestone as a way of learning to read. That's Gothic AF.
It really is. It really. I mean, I was unintentionally Gothic. I just happened to live next door to a cemetery, but she sought it out. She put the pin in that early on. I feel like it's a lot to live up to, really. So this has been fantastic, and we will come back and if you guys have additional questions, don't worry, still type them. We'll get back to them in a little bit, but Davey's got his quiz, and then I have some super exciting, fantastic announcements. But Davey, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to slide into the back.
Hang on, before you do that, we should show everybody your movie.
My movie!
If you didn't see it on social media, we're going to play it really quick for
That's
you.
Right.
So everybody enjoy Brandy's interpretation of Victoria Frankenstein.
Yes, being very, very cheeky about it as well.
What a sublime sight it is! After so much work, I think at last the monster may begin to awaken. What's that I hear? Has he come to life? Yes, yes, creature. Oh, it's wonderful to see you. What?
He's actually reading Frankenstein in that. Sorry, I cut that off a little bit short. That's Mark, also who cameos as Thing periodically to deliver drinks, being the monster there. So.
I'm sure we're going to come up with, I'm sure, more silly videos as we go through different books and things like that. But I actually have something for show and tell. I never get to have anything for show and tell, but I have a golem.
Ooh.
I have a friend who went to Prague and taught there for a year, and she brought this back for me as a souvenir. So I have my own, and obviously learning about him in your book, I hope I don't make this come alive, because it sounds like there's some pretty bad consequences as they continue to grow. So he's going to sit back here with the bobbleheads from now on and keep an eye on the show. And I was going to talk about, Kathryn, I was going to talk about films and pop culture and everything like that, but we kind of got into it, didn't we, already with everybody?
We can talk about it more. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface.
Absolutely. It seems like Frankenstein has pretty much met everyone from Abbott and Costello to Bugs Bunny to he was in DC Comics, he was in Marvel Comics. I don't know, just what is your take, do you think? Why has this character, maybe of all the, the universal monsters as they call them, do you think this character has just been everywhere in pop culture?
He's been used as a metaphor for so much. Like I said, bad science primarily, but also the kind of uncontrolled rage, unjustified rage. I'd say he's got some issues that he's working through personally, but it's seen as, and also he's very easy to perceive as an outsider, even though he is clearly human or human-ish.
Right.
He's, it's very easy to demonize because he looks a bit different. It's So I think he can suit a lot of themes in many different genres and contexts.
Well, it was so influential that even a young Davey at 10 years old decided to, this is my last show and tell, decided to dress up as him for Halloween. And I think I got a pretty good one there. I got some of the traditional, 1930s look going.
Those are some shoulder pads.
Yes. All right, so it's time for our quiz. So obviously you know a lot about old Frankenstein, but how much do you know about young Frankenstein?
Virtually nothing.
That's all right. These aren't too challenging. And remember, this is for everybody too, so I want you to be playing along in the chat, all the peculiar. So your first question, and I hope this isn't cutting our faces off because I reformatted these a little bit to make them a little bigger. So the quiz is called Not Old But Young Frankenstein. Our first question: when Igor, and yes, that is a joke, a running joke in the movie, when Igor goes to the brain depository, of course, to pick up a brain for the monster, the door instructs people who arrive after 5 p.m. to do what with their brains? A, keep brains on ice for morning. B, return the brains to original body. Or C, slip brains through slot in door. Of course, this is a classic Mel Brooks visual gag. He loves visual signs, and the chat's trying to help you out here. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to be swayed entirely by the crowd. I am there with my torch and pitchfork, along with everybody else, and I'm going to say C.
You are correct. Slip the brains through. Of course, a very, of course, why would you not think to slide a brain through a slot in the door if you're dropping it off at the depository? All right, question 2. To prove his creation's intelligence and agility, Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, now remember, this is the grandson of Victor Frankenstein, and the monster danced to this classic Irving Berlin song. Was it A, Alexander's Ragtime Band, B, Puttin' on the Ritz, or C, Cheek to Cheek?
This one I think I know, because I think I've seen this clip, even if I can't remember the whole film.
What do you think it is?
And again, I'm going with the crowd. I'm on my way to the windmill with the rest of them. It's B, Putting on the Ritz.
Put it on the Ritz. Absolutely correct. And if you've ever heard Gene Wilder talk about this, this is the only thing that him and Mel Brooks ever argued about. He wrote these pages and sent them to Mel, and Mel said, "You're going to put on top hats and canes and dance with the monster to putting on the Ritz?" And he's like, "I'm telling you, we got to have it in there." All right, our last question. Speaking of running gags throughout the movie, in a running gag throughout the movie, whenever the housekeeper's name, Frau Blucher, is uttered, it causes this animal to react. Does it cause the dogs to bark, the wolves to howl, or the horses to neigh? And this is probably one of those jokes that just sticks with me from like when I was a kid and first saw this movie. This is the one scene like we remembered. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, dogs to bark and wolves to howl, that's very vampires. So I can't imagine that Mel Brooks would be nearly so obvious. So I'm going to have to go with C, horses to neigh.
Correct. Even when they weren't on screen, those horses did not like her very much, apparently. Well, congratulations. 3 for 3 on our quiz.
With
Fantastic
much
job.
help. Thank you to everyone in the chat.
I love it. I was watching. I was enjoying. You guys are cracking me up out here. That is my favorite movie. I actually have a photographic memory. It has a slow shutter speed, but it is photographic, and I have that movie memorized so that if Mark's bored, I can be like, "Would you like me to start at the beginning and just give you the movie? Because we can just do that, and I can just give you the entire." With the voices, and I should probably not admit these things on television, but it's true. So thank you so much. That was great, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Dave.
And it had so much. I rewatched it obviously to write the questions, and it had so much more context having listened to your book now and understanding everything from the original Frankenstein and the misinterpretations of him over the years. Like you said, the bad science. So yeah.
Oh yeah, this is Wendy Wassman just said R.I.P. Cloris Leachman. She was so great. She was so great.
What a cast! Incredible.
Oh, I know. It was absolutely stellar. It's my favorite Mel Brooks film, and I know that's tough because I like Blazing Saddles and all of its horribleness as well. But yeah, it was too good. So I have some announcements and I have some exciting news. So first of all, every time we have one of our wonderful events, we always pick some winners to have some swag. And tonight, our winner is Codex. Codex, if you are here, I will send you an email later. Codex, you have won a prize, and you will get to choose from some of our swag, and we will send that your way, as well as Wendy. Wendy has also won a prize. But I also have some exciting news for the rest of you. So, as you probably are aware, I have released season 2, and we are going to be doing subscriptions. Now, you might be wondering, oh no, what is this? What is it going to mean for all of us? Well, don't worry. We are still going to be offering the by donation tickets, which essentially meaning they can be free. And I totally agree with you, Kristen. If there is a Cleveland field trip, it will include a Young Frankenstein viewing, and I have a karaoke bar in my basement. So there. We can do a lot while we're here. Kathryn, you're totally invited. You can come. You can stay in this room, in fact, which is
I'm just going to check flights to Cleveland. Excuse me.
We are selling subscriptions in part because obviously this is a bit of it's a surprisingly expensive endeavor on my side of things, but we'll still offer the free events. But if you choose the subscription, there are 3 levels, and there's extra things. There's extra shows, including a sneak peek with Lindsay Fitzharris on her new book. There will be an extra show with Chuck Wendig and some other folks. There will be also a couple of musical shows. Yes, the lineup is very good. We got Deborah Blum coming on as well. In addition to that, and I do want you to look, there's 3 levels. And honestly, you're still getting all of the shows and all the other things as well as some swag. But speaking of swag, you might know we had a Zazzle shop for a while, but the quality control there was rather difficult for me to keep a handle on. So I am going to be opening a new shop for us, and I just got some of the new t-shirts. So here is one, Your Peculiar Book Club, If You're Weird, Your Family, right there on the bottom. And we've got a bunch of different sizes for these. We also have now several different mug choices with various krakens on various squids of various sizes. And we'll have some book totes coming along too. And also, if you loved that teacup that we were giving away there for a while and you just had to have one of your own, I am going to be buying those in bulk from the creator and giving you a little bit of a discount on those at the shop as well. They are pricey because they are handmade. But so look for that coming up soon. I am attempting to figure out Shopify, which is complicated. But this is the lineup, the new lineup for next year. You will see all sorts of exciting possibilities. And you, as always, they're live. They're live and you can talk to the people right in your living room. Basically, we're also going to be offering at the highest level the chance for you to be on the show with me and Davey and an author and get your mug up here. There will also be the chance to be in a writing workshop with myself and one of the authors. So I hope you guys will check that out. And we're still moving forward. Yes, you definitely want to. Yes, the teacups are pretty awesome. I should have brought one up tonight. I don't know if you haven't seen them. They're phenomenal, by Angeletti Designs on Etsy, and she does all the filigree and everything, which is quite amazing. It takes her quite a long time as well. So I'm very excited about that. So be on the lookout for new things coming your way soon. And in the meantime, I know we're getting close to the end, but I just have myself personally a final couple of questions for Kathryn. One of them being, what for you is the most difficult part of writing a book? Because I've written several. I know you've written a ton of them. You've got some wonderful titles to your name. What's the most difficult part?
It's balance for me. I write about very diverse things.
Yes.
As you do, because it's not just history, it's not just science, it's, there are literary influences, art influences, and it's trying to figure out, okay, I'm interested in this, but is anybody else? Because I'm not in, my brain goes off in weird places. So it's finding the balance and the tone of it. Yeah, some of my early drafts for Making the Monster, it was like, it's not funny. And it's like, well, Mary Shelley's life wasn't very funny.
Yeah.
So it's finding that I want it to be entertaining, but it's finding that tone and the balance that I really struggle with. I don't know. What do you find the most challenging?
The actual writing part? Obviously, I think the most difficult part of a book is after the writing, dealing with marketing and agents and publishers and things like that. But of the actual writing, is synthesizing. Because as you point out, a lot of my work is similar in the sense that I'm looking at history, I'm looking at social justice, and the one I'm working on right now is hormone science, genetic science, social justice, rights movements, all of that kind of moving. That's not Mr. Humble and Dr. Butch, that's the current one. And cutting through a huge swath of maybe 50 years or sometimes more. Is how do you synthesize that so that people see a singular narrative?
Yes.
Without it's the Siddhartha Mukherjee is very good at it. I call it the Mukherjee effect. I'm trying to Mukherjee my work, and it's not always simple, because how do you do all that and not it just be a list of names and dates?
Oh God, yeah. And how do you, when there's so many things going on in parallel, because life does not happen in a linear fashion. There are many things that happen in parallel. It's like, well, I don't want to take a complete dogleg and go off and explain this thing because you need to know it for later. I totally agree with you. It is a nightmare just getting it into a coherent whole.
Yeah. And a lot of our readers and participants are also writers in their own right, or early writers. Some of them have published, some of them are working on it. And I know it might look like the hardest part is getting an agent, which is what Susan Ballinger said. But sometimes I feel like I did all that stuff. I was like, okay, now the part that's fun. And then I'm like, oh, the fun part's terribly difficult. So
the fun part isn't always fun. It's I'm very lucky to be a writer. I love it. It is.
I am too.
How many people get to do that as a job? It's fantastic. I am not complaining, but the idea that it is, you just sit there and wait for the muse to turn up. No, right. I'm sorry. It's just miserable. It's sitting in front of a screen going, what the hell do I write now? Why is this sentence so terrible? And even when you're
having a really good time, it's not. I think you're right. The question is a good one. Who will read this? Who will read this? But I have at least one of the answers, which is The Peculiars will read this. So our fans here tonight, those who have joined us, the Peculiars, I love you to tiny little bits and pieces, which I will sew back together into an 8-foot creature. And thank you all for joining us tonight, for being part of this. It is always magical, and I can't wait to see you in the new season. Thank you, Kathryn, for coming along too.
Thank you, and thank you for the great questions. It was tremendous fun.
Yes. Yay! Yay, Peculiars!